Salutations everyone, this is Razor bringing you guys another Overwatch video where today we're going to be talking about some sleeping monsters for Overwatch 2, particularly in the DPS role, and Ashe is one of them. I did get some Ashe gameplay in Overwatch 2, but it was kind of like too dominant and like not competitive to, I didn't find it very entertaining, so I'm going to use some good old Overwatch 1 footage, as there's only a few days left for this to be any somewhat relevant. So yeah, with the change to 5v5 and there being so much damage characters, I feel like some of them are being overlooked. They didn't get a lot of attention in the beta because of like new characters and reworks, kind of took a lot of the limelight. But I feel like the Flyers, your Echoes and your Pharahs are going to be really good, and people didn't pick a lot of them in the beta and they could be quite dominant, and I felt like Ashe was another pick. And we actually did see quite a bit of Ashe in the last stage of the Overwatch League, picked usually on defense in favor of the Sojourn, just due to her dynamite damage, sort of stopping an enemy team from pushing through, biding you some time because they have to heal off that damage. They can't go in with their big Junker Queen dives, right? While everyone's burning. So we did get to see a bit of her in Overwatch League, which is not something we saw very often beforehand. We saw a little bit of her now and again, but definitely never been like a big meta pick. And while we're not here to talk about what's going to be meta, I feel like at the lower levels, you know, your bronze to your diamonds, Ashe is going to be a fantastic pick in a lot of situations, and even with the nerfs that she has to Bob and her dynamite, I think she's going to be better than ever before. With the lack of shields, there's going to be a lot less things impeding her way. This also makes Hanzo, I think, really good, and a lot of people aren't talking about him. But Bob is just a bit more consistent of an ultimate than Dragons. Dragons might like have a higher ceiling because you can combo it a lot better with your Gravitons, your Shatters, your Gravitic Fluxes, right? Your tank ultimates. But Bob is definitely not as strong as he is in Overwatch 1, but you can still do it to get a flank, pressure a point, cover a lane, create a crossfire. You don't have to get like a ton of kills off of a Bob to get value out of him. So I feel like with consistent damage that she can do at long and mid range and even short range, you see in the Overwatch League, you see a lot of rapid fire hip fires from Ashe, more so than maybe you would think at the highest level, but they actually do that quite a lot, and her coach gun is actually a big difference maker, not in the damage but just in the boot potential. There's not a whole lot of crowd control left in Overwatch 2, and so Ashe is one of those few tools to make her not an easy dive target. If you're talking about Winston or Wrecking Balls, while Soldier is great and super strong in Overwatch 2, even after the nerfs, super powerful, and doesn't have to worry about shields, and Helix Rocket is arguably better than Dynamite because just that one-shot potential is just a lot of value in Overwatch 2, because the less people that are on a team, the more value a single pick will get you. He's diveable. Even with his healing station, a Wrecking Ball or a Winston or a dive character, an Echo going in his face and sticky bombing him, he's vulnerable to a dive. Ashe, not so much with the coach gun, and she can do consistent, good, easy, long and mid-range damage. She's a very good hit scan character for long-range duels. So while Widowmaker, I still feel actually has a place in Overwatch 2, and a lot of people were kind of thinking we would see more of Widowmaker at the highest levels than we have. That's just because Sojourn is just so much better. Sojourn can one-shot headshot any squishy in the game very often and do a bunch of other things. So Widow no longer has that niche. I feel like that's, you know, maybe a reason why Sojourn might be considered too strong. And Sojourn, I think, will always be good. But I think like Ashe is also going to always be good, and isn't going to ask a lot of you at the lowest levels, because it's going to be so consistent of damage with the dynamites. And like I mentioned in my last video, with the lack of diva, regardless of how good she is, she could be good, she could be really good, or she could just be kind of good in some situations. You're not going to see a lot of her, regardless of how good she may or may not be, because the people are more comfortable just relying on a shield or going with big dive gameplay, right? So you're not going to see that defense matrix eat up Helix rockets, eat up Pharah rockets, eat up the sticky bombs, and eat up dynamite. So you're going to get a ton of free ult charge as those DPS characters that you may not be used to getting, right? And so I feel like that's a ton of added value to the dynamite. It's going to be consistent. Sure, your Kiriko can cleanse all of that burn if everyone's grouped up together, and Zarya can cleanse with her bubble, but that's only 2 bubbles at max, and that's assuming she uses one of her bubbles on a teammate, which is usually not the best pick, but you know, if it's necessary, then she'll probably do it, right? So there's not a lot of things that's going to stop your dynamite from getting damage. And when it comes to the long-range engagements, she's going to be a little bit better than Hanzo at some cases. Sure, she's going to be one-shot headshotting like a Widow or a Hanzo can, even with, say, a Mercy Pocket boosting her. But just the amount of bullets that she has, the buffs that we've gotten over the years to her reload speed, and the amount of ammo that she has really keeps her as a consistent threat. Her downtime isn't very much, to the point of, like, if you've run out of ammo, chances are that fight has already been possibly determined on if it's going your way or not. And the ability to rapid fire at close range to finish off a kill or add additional pressure, ready for your coach gun to come off a cooldown or something like that, is definitely valuable. So she's not as diveable as like a Soldier or a McCree. She's just going to do much longer range damage than McCree. She's not going to do as much damage overall as a Soldier, most likely, unless she's hitting fat dynamites every single time. And she's going to be a little bit easier to use than Hanzo in a lot of cases, and have a more consistent ult, even though it might not have the multi-kill potential of Dragon Strikes, which aren't going to get as much value in Overwatch 2 as they do in Overwatch 1. Things are a lot more skirmishy, people are a lot more spread out, and you're not going to have as many people probably playing around with ultimates that are easy to combo with Dragon Strikes, such as Graviton Surge. More people are going to be relying on your Reinhardts and your Orissas, your more sustainable characters, and probably not as much Zarya. You'll still see some Zarya, and she's going to be really good, I feel like, on control maps most of the time. You know, especially depending on how grouped up things are, because if you're forcing people to group up for control, then Zarya is going to get a lot more added value. So while McCree may be good against flankers, that sticky bomb, like I mentioned before, can be a lot better than the stun in some circumstances, and is definitely more consistent. Obviously, in some places, it's not going to be as good, but sometimes it's going to be better. He's just not going to have the same long-range poke damage as Ashe does, which is going to be really good with against all of the tanks that don't have shields or have to coordinate a dive. You can interrupt a Wrecking Ball diving in with your coach gun. You can get a couple of headshots on a Winston before he goes in for the dive to sort of slow him down. You hit a dynamite on his back line, all of a sudden he's not going to get the assistance that he might need. Same against a Doomfist or a Junker Queen who has no shield of all, of course. So I just feel like her kit is just going to be really good consistently. And as you know, we mentioned with the people worried about playing with new players, which isn't going to happen to you because you're not a new player, not going to play with new players, in that they won't be able to switch to, you know, Kiriko, a possibly meta hero, which I think like nobody has said. I mean, plenty of pros have already been playing Kiriko for a bit, and they said that she was actually pretty hard to play, and then she actually even got nerfed after that. But we've seen some gameplay with her now. I don't think she's going to, you know, completely break a meta or form a meta or anything like that, probably at any level. But the point is, people still don't switch very much in this game. The data shows that 80% of all players play 2 or less characters for their role, which makes total sense. And that number goes up the higher in level you go because of specialization. If someone is a top 500 Wrecking Ball, then they're just always going to play Wrecking Ball, right? If someone is really, really good in the one-trick Mercy, you probably want them on Mercy regardless of what the meta is, because they're just going to give you a better chance of winning if they're playing what got them to the level that they are, right? So that's a really silly argument that people are going to continue to throw out for whatever reason. But if you have to pick 1 or 2 DPS characters that will kind of always be playable, no matter, I think, like what the meta is, and she's not going to be as great in some close quarters fights, but still not bad. Ashe is a pretty good character to pick. I feel like if you just want to do 1 or 2 damage characters, Ashe is going to be a feasible, pickable pick in a lot of circumstances against a lot of lineups of tanks. She's good against dive. She's good against death ball. She's good against flyers. She's good against slow moving characters because she has the range. She has the boop. She has a bit of a self peel with that coach gun, and an ultimate that can at the very least challenge an objective, do pressure from a different angle, get the crossfire going. And the dynamite pressure cannot be understated, right? Especially if you're hitting multiple targets, they're going to have to use cooldowns on themselves. The healers aren't going to be able to get a lot of value out of their self-healing passive because that burning is just ticking and ticking away. So while it's not going to be as much damage as we were used to in Overwatch 1, that pressure is going to be there, and you're going to be able to hold an angle by yourself with Ashe because of her mid and long range capabilities. I feel like it's just going to put her in a very good spot. You take a look at Pharah's and Echoes, I feel like are also going to be a bit of a sleeping giant in Overwatch 2. Not a lot of people ever learned how to play against Pharah because that was really an early concern. If you remember the first year or so of Overwatch 1 in the pregame lobby, someone would be like, oh, okay, we need a hit scan. You know, this is like before 2.2.2, so usually we'd have a bunch of DPS characters, and sometimes you still wouldn't have a hit scan. You were always like, oh, we need someone on Soldier to stop Pharah, even though that's not the best way to stop a Pharah. After a while, people stopped worrying about her, and people stopped picking her. So not a lot of people ever learned how to stop Pharah, and people still cannot stop Pharmacy to this day. You take Pharmacy in any competitive match on a map that's decent for them, they're going to roll. They're absolutely going to roll because that's something really difficult to stop as a solo player, right? You're going to need coordination. You're going to need teamwork. You're not going to have one person isn't going to be able to take down a duo by themselves very consistently. You're not going to be getting power boosted Widow headshots on every character, and that's really the only way you're going to be winning these 2v1s. And Bob is just good contesting. See, the Soldier throws out the visor, and they put everything into them. Bob completely disrupts that. So it might not be the initiator that you want it to be and maybe are used to, but it's still a good counterplay to, all right, they're going to use this beat to push us off. I'm going to throw the Bob on the point, so it's going to contest. We're not going to lose that point as quickly. We're not going to lose that percent, right? Or they're going for the Genji Blade or the visor or something where they're going to be flying around and try to stop us. Bob's going to be that constant pressure that they can't ignore. They either have to destroy it to stop it or just get away from his LOS. So I feel like Bob is still going to get value. He's still going to be in a pretty decent place. And Ashe doesn't need to get big flanks. She doesn't need to get big ults. She doesn't even necessarily need to get huge dynamites and one-shot headshots because that's not what you need her for. Couple of taps, couple of dynamites, a good self-sustainability with that coach gun to give yourself some peel or get to a high ground quickly by yourself. It's going to be a lot of guaranteed consistent value. And I think a lot of people are going to be sleeping on that going into Overwatch 2, focusing on new characters or some old comfort picks where Ashe is the character that you want to be. With these long lines of sight, she's going to give you that long range value, more consistent than the Sojourn because she has to rack up her railgun energy. Easier to hit than Hanzo's projectile speed of his arrows, and less diveable, easy targets than a McCree without his roll or a Soldier with or without his healing station. So if you're looking to pick up a character or expand your roster, Ashe is your girl.